Welcome to the ScuttleButt Podcast. We are on our second episode. Super exciting and really good feedback from the first one. I know it was just kind of like an intro, but I'm really hoping to keep this going and hopefully get some really cool guests on here in the next few weeks. But anyways, let's move on to the topic of the day, which I feel like I talk about this topic so much in my daily life just because icing an injury, it's like a no-brainer. It just seems like it's just something that you do, right? It's just like you you fall down and scrape your knee, you put ice on it. But like if you think about it, it's like where did that start, right? And it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction of, okay, I'm hurt, put ice on it. Or like anything similar, right? And like once you start thinking about like the science behind it, it doesn't really add up to what it is, right? So anyways, I'm going to move on. So I'm a huge believer of not using ice on injuries. And I've had to like put my money where my mouth is when I actually do get injured myself and try to take care of the injury in the way that science has shown me to do it instead of how I have been taught how to do it. So a little bit of background on this topic is usually you put ice on swelling in order to decrease the inflammation, which is not a bad thing, right? We take ibuprofen, we put ice on an injury to kill the inflammation, right? Because that way you at least have like a little bit more range of motion. Like let's say you like tweak your elbow, something goes wrong and it's super inflamed that you can't move it without being super like in pain, right? So reach for an ice bag. I remember one of my first competitions when I was in grappling. It was oh man, I rolled with this lady for like 15 minutes straight because it was a no time limit, no gi, Thanksgiving like grapple-a-thon. And so it was submission only. Like I said, no time limit. This is the same competition that I saw one of my teammates roll for literally an hour with the same person. 1 hour match. I was like, man, I'm never gonna complain about having to roll with somebody for like 8 minutes ever again, right? But yeah, I rolled with this person for like 15 minutes and I was doing really well. Like we both kept getting to really advantageous positions and we'd reverse it and then almost get a tap and then reverse it or get out of it or whatever. And I remember this is back when I was like very brand new white belt, right? She got me into an Americana position, which is like when your shoulders are like flat on the ground, your arms kind of up in this type of like 90-degree angle position. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to like bring your elbow up towards the ceiling while keeping your wrist on the ground. And it like hyperextends the elbow or the shoulder, kind of like whatever gives first, right? And I remember being so tired that I was like, oh, well, she's not actually gonna do it. Which is like such a weird thought of like, no, of course this lady isn't going to submit me in a submitting competition. And so I felt something pop in my elbow and I immediately tapped because I was like, I've never felt that before. What in the world just happened, right? And so I got off the mats. I ended up getting second place that year. And I was just like sitting, like pouting on the sidelines. And my coach was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He was like, "Do you want an ice bag?" And I was like, "No." Yes. And so, put ice on it. It definitely, numbed the pain. It made it so like I didn't have to feel it anymore. But oh man, that was my first major jujitsu injury. And it was it made me never want to like get armbarred or Americana'd ever again. So I just got really strong. But anyways, going back to the ice thing, there's such conflicting things of when and where to use ice, right? I'm going to go into like the different researches and stuff too. So, you know, I'm not just like talking out my behind, you know, but you know, there's ice baths, which are really in right now. Like GSP, literally, Georges St. Pierre, one of the best fighters of all time, like non-arguably. He's probably one of the only ones that like you can say greatest fighter of all time, Georges St. Pierre, and everyone like is just like, yes, of course, like it's no argument. And so he religiously will go and do these ice baths every day. I think like he eats super clean, like takes really good care of his body. Is I think he's like early 40s, I want to say, maybe, if not, or like late 30s, but he's like in very good shape right now, and you know, chalks it all up to these ice baths that he has. I started doing ice baths last week, um and I ended up putting it off because I don't think I was doing it correctly. Like I mostly did it to break the habit from my mind, right? Like in my head, I don't like being cold. I would rather get punched in the face repeatedly than go into an ice bath, right? I just don't like being cold. And so you know, I finally decided to like, you know, battle my demon. It was like, all right, you know what? This is a block that's in my head that I need to get over. And so I finally did it. I woke up like, you know, regular time one morning. I was just like, I'm gonna put ice in a bathtub and just sit in it, see what happens, right? I was in there for like 2 minutes. It was uncomfortable, but honestly, like the weight cutting baths that I do at the end of at the end of a fight camp, way more terrible. Like you have to sit in there for like 15 minutes. You're thirsty, you're hungry, you're tired, you're sweating. Like, ugh, those are the like that ice bath was actually, I don't want to say it's enjoyable, but I'm saying like it was 2 minutes of just like super cold, getting your breathing down and just kind of focusing, zenning out, right? After that, you're done. One of my friends that does them a little bit more habitually than I do said that it has to be a certain temperature, like 34 or 35 degrees, in order to get the health benefits that you get from it. But I'm going to do a little bit more research on that before I do another one. But yeah, if you've done ice baths, I'd love to hear your thoughts about them. And yeah, like the health benefits itself is pretty much what I was trying to figure out about it, right? Like people have claimed that it helps with DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, which usually happens 2 days after like a super hard workout. I don't know how many of you guys have worked out before, but usually it's like the first day, let's say you work out super hard workout on Monday. Tuesday, you're a little bit sore, but Wednesday, you like literally can't even walk. You're so sore, but it's just from the same workout. And scientists really like, they do this. They're like, I don't actually know why this is a thing. And so, yeah, it's very interesting, the whole how much we don't really know about the body. All right. I know I'm kind of like bouncing all over the place for this. But this is like train of consciousness podcast. Maybe that's what I should have called it. So let's go back to the science of not using ice on injuries. So there's been so much research showing that ice not only delays recovery for whatever the muscle is, but actually uh like hinders like all of the things that your body is normally supposed to do in order to recover that injury, which makes sense, right? Like think of what inflammation is, right? Inflammation is saying that there's something wrong and your body needs to fix it. So the inflammation is all of that like good white blood cells, that plasma, like all of that good stuff that your body needs in order to repair a part of your body. All of that is in your inflammation, right? Inflammation is not the issue here, right? The issue is the injury. So whether it's a torn ligament or like a sprain, a strain, a tear, whatever it is that you have, there's going to be inflammation in that area because that is your body's natural response to an injury. In order to fully recover, you've got to have that inflammation to the area. Otherwise, it's like, think of it this way. There's a car accident, right? Your white blood cells and your plasma and all that stuff are the fire trucks and the police and, all the ambulance, all that like shebang, right? That has to go through the traffic to the car accident to clean up what happened with the car accident, to move it off to the side, to take care of the injured, and then the rest of the flow of traffic is able to go on, right? So think of that as your body. If you have an injury, let's go back to the elbow, right? I strained my elbow, not tapping to that submission, years and years ago, right? So I had inflammation. I had a car accident in my elbow, so to speak, right? And so the inflammation is the fire trucks and the police cars and the ambulances all rushing to the source to fix the problem and get the rest of the body moving like it's supposed to be. The big thing about using ice on an injury is that when you use ice on the injury, you are stopping the flow of those fire trucks, those policemen, those ambulances to get to the site. So instead of having, let's use like an unrealistic number, instead of having like 50 policemen and ambulances at your site to get things cleaned up and swept away as soon as possible, you only have one or maybe two, which is fine, but it's going to take way longer for that one single fire truck or policeman to clean up the scene than it would if they had the support of their whole team. Also, there was a really cool article. I'm gonna link it into the YouTube below this. So there was this research done, this experiment where they had two groups of people. Both were like some type of athlete, basketball player, something like that, right? One group had injuries of similar types, right? So one group used ice while they were recovering. The other group did not use ice, and they just used this I don't want to say new programming, but like the new idea of like using as much range of motion as possible and putting as much pressure and mobility on the joint as possible in order to like generate blood flow into the joint and make sure that your body is recovering at its own natural pace, right? So you have group A, which is using ice. You have group B, which is not using ice. Group A, they had delayed recovery time up to 6 weeks after the B group. So B group, they didn't use ice. Their elbow strain or elbow sprain or whatever started getting healed instantaneously, right? So like they were able to start recovering immediately once that swelling was able to go to the area. And yeah, it was uncomfortable. Yeah, like the swelling kind of like throws off different joints and stuff in your body. But all of that help was able to go to the injured spot, and they were able to like start recovering quicker. The group that used the ice, they felt less pain because they were using ice to numb the area. However, their recovery was delayed 6 weeks past what the B group was. So like no matter what, this B group started recovering 6 weeks before. They got a 6-week head start with the same injuries because they didn't use ice. And like that's pretty much across the board. That's pretty like well researched, but no one's really even like saying anything about it. The guy that came up with the acronym for RICE, which is like, rest, ice, compression, elevation. He actually came out and redacted that statement saying that you need to use ice for injuries. And he replaced it with it's something I'm gonna have to look it up, but he replaced it with another term. So I can't find it, but this guy that created the RICE acronym, which everyone like lives and breathes by: rest, ice, compression, elevation, literally across the board, right? He actually like went back and like did a little bit more research, realized that ice is actually not the thing to do, and like I said, no one's talking about it. So the new thing that you're supposed to do, which seems counterintuitive, but this goes from the smallest injury of, just slightly hyperextending your elbow, or like a strain, a sprain, everything up to a break and a knee replacement, a full knee replacement, right? So this covers everything on the spread, is movement. I know, says the personal trainer. Movement solves everything. But really, seriously, it's a thing. Like, doctors way more educated and advanced than me say this is the exact thing. I'm literally like reading this exact like article. I'm gonna also link this into the YouTube below, but this is called Move an Injury, Not Rice, by Dr. Jennifer Robinson. This is on the University of British Columbia website, but she suggested that for foot and ankle injuries, drawing the alphabet with your toes. So like I always say, you like try to do range of motion as far as you can in whatever direction without hurting yourself. So like going back to that elbow issue, right? Like if it hurts to extend my elbow more than this, right? I'm just going to move it up to that point. Just keep getting that blood flowing into the area. The more I move it, the more your lymphatic system, which is the thing that like helps process out all of the viruses and bacteria and like dead cells and stuff from your body, the more that system can work, which is like pumped off of movement of your muscles, the easier it's going to be for you to recover. So like I said, for foot and ankle injuries, it was recommended to draw the alphabet with your toes. For knee injuries, using a stationary bike with a low tension. For shoulder injuries, using pendulums, pole walking, and Nordic skiing. Neck pain, rows and ellipse. For back pain, walking, swimming, and yoga. For lower limb fractures, water running and seated weights. For upper limb fractures, walking and the recumbent bike. So this goes completely against everything that you've probably heard during your life, right? Usually, if you're injured, just take a rest day. Just take a day off. It's okay. But it's actually the worst thing you can do, because all that's going to happen is as you're sitting there and as you're immobilizing the joint, you're not getting any blood flow to the area. Also, you're building up scar tissue, which I have never had a huge surgery, right? Like I want to say, like I've given birth, right? But like I haven't had someone like go and cut anything out of me, right? But for my people that I've met throughout my years that have had larger surgeries, I've had people that come back from collarbone issues, like collarbone breaks where their shoulders stuck in a sling for like 6 months. One of my other clients, she's had 2 knee replacements, and it's just like night and day for this. So like let's talk about the shoulder replacement, or the collarbone break first. Okay, so this person, she had a collarbone injury, and like collarbone healed up fine. However, because she didn't move the joint while we were waiting for the collarbone to get set back into place, her shoulder froze. And the frozen shoulder is the biggest thing that she remembers from the recovery. It's not the collarbone pain, it's not the collarbone anything, right? It's the lack of range of motion and mobility in that joint, which was the most detrimental to her life afterwards, right? So like she had to do physical therapy to get that frozen shoulder like unfrozen, right? And then slowly get that range of motion back into the joint so that she could actually use it fully. Luckily, you know, it's not like she was too far gone that like, oh nope, stuck like that forever. But also let's talk about this other client that I had who, like I said, not just one knee replacement, 2 knee replacements. First knee replacement, just okay, go do the knee replacement. We're just gonna put you on the couch for like the first 6 weeks, and then after those 6 weeks, when everything's nice and healed, then we'll do physical therapy. And you know, like I said, I'm only a personal trainer. I'm only, you know, one of those like book read types where I'm interested in something and I research it and try to learn from the best in the field, but like I haven't gone to college for any of this stuff, right? I think I have an associate's somewhere around here. But anyways, I digress. So just saying, like I like to listen to what other people that are more experienced and educated in these fields have to say, and then make a decision on myself. So this person, she had a full knee replacement. First knee replacement, after 6 weeks, her knee was frozen. Like she could not move her knee. I think it was, I don't want to like throw like an imagination number out there, but it was like her range of motion was so small because she had just left it in the same position, didn't try to move it, didn't try to do anything too much with it, took a whole bunch of painkillers, put ice on it, all this stuff, right? Which is normal for Western medicine to treat like intense big surgery like that, right? Nothing wrong with that because that's the status quo. However, going into the second knee surgery, she wanted to try something a little bit different because after her first knee surgery, they had to go back in and manually manipulate the scar tissue out of the joint, which again, for her, it wasn't the pain and suffering during the knee rehab. It was the pain and suffering of breaking up the scar tissue and trying to get that joint moving again, which was the absolute worst. In my mind, you know, if the scar tissue is the biggest issue, scar tissue is the biggest, it rhymes. If that's the biggest issue, like how do we avoid that from developing, right? That seems like the best idea in order to make sure that you know, you can avoid a really big issue in your future if you just do this. Okay, how do we avoid scar tissue buildup? Oh, movement, stretching, flexibility, like all of this stuff. And so her second knee replacement, her doctor pretty much said, hey, we're gonna immediately, like the second you get home, we're gonna give you one of those like bicycle things. And it's like one of those like little bike pedal thing. I think you're supposed to like put it under a desk or whatever, so you're like biking while you're sitting and relaxing or working or whatever you're supposed to be doing. But they gave her one of those, and she was supposed to immediately go on it and just like strap her foot to it, and it would just move the joint as it was healing. So she had this mobility in this newly constructed knee, just kind of getting that motion, getting that blood flowing. And she's had such a better time with this knee replacement than her first one. Like she's in a better headspace. Her body's recovering really well. She's literally like all the way back to her full range of motion that she was before her knee replacement. And she's, I want to say, oh man, I can't remember when. I think we're almost 3 weeks out from when she last had her replacement. So like it's like so crazy. It's like amazing just like seeing the results happen versus just reading an article of like some wacko being like, ice is terrible, don't use ice. Oh man. Okay. So I'm gonna keep this article for you guys to see. I'm also gonna link this other one, which is like super important. Let's see. I want to read this one to you. So this says, cold therapy has been used regularly as an immediate treatment to induce analgia. Analgia? Someone's going to make fun of me for not pronouncing that correctly. But, you know, the numbing effect following acute soft tissue injuries. However, a prolonged ice application has proved to delay the start of the healing and lengthen the recovery process. And so not only are you delaying that your body can actually do what it's supposed to do, you're also like lengthening how long it's going to take you to recover. Me as an athlete, that's a terrible thing. Like I want to, if I get injured at all, I want to be like, okay, how can we just either fight through this or get back to the training floor as fast as possible? It's amazing. Like our bodies know exactly what to do all the time. Like they may not be the smartest, right? Like you know, as a personal trainer, I literally deal with people having muscle imbalances all the time. Like, hey, did you know that you have a slight twist when you squat down? But like it's not their fault. They literally don't even notice it. And their body is just like, oh, well, we twist a little bit. Let's just make this leg stronger than the other instead of fixing the base problem, right? I think that kind of goes into a little bit of like how what's the word? Like interwoven we are, like how much we, I don't say like need everybody, like need other people, but like like we're very community oriented species, right? And I think our bodies are smart enough to, you know, just kind of like fight through it and keep carrying on. But the more that you do that, the more that your body just kind of like overlooks whatever the problem is, um, the less likely you're gonna be able to like grow old with less injuries. I remember like I've been a personal trainer for let's see, um, let's say 5 years, right? I'm a personal trainer for 5 years. And you know, I've read so many books and I thought I was good. I thought I knew as much information as I needed to know in order to make sure that my own health and safety was correct, right? But I always had a hip problem. And I was like, oh, it's just because, you know, I had old Muay Thai injury, right? And one of my yoga friends, which hopefully I'll get her on the show someday because she's like a little ball of knowledge. It's amazing. She did like an intake process with me for one of her yogurt for one of her yoga, you know, sessions or whatever. And what she did was she put like little like sticky dots on like each side of my body. So like one was at like my shoulders, one was in the middle of my body. Like she put some on my hips, she put them on my knees. Like what she was seeing was she was putting like an actual dot, like a physical dot that she could take a picture of, right? So she took a picture of my whole body and then she lined up like, okay, are these dots in line? Oh, did you know that your right leg is slightly internally rotated in your hip, which is why it's catching when you do your squat, which is why your hip hurts? And I was like, oh. And then me as a personal trainer, I'm like, it's because my right glute is not as strong as my left glute because of these like, you know, life things that I do. And it was like, it just like blew my mind. I'm like, whoa, like this is kind of like, I don't claim to know everything, right? But like, it's just these little things that other people know of like being able to help you out with being able to see you from like a third party type of view, right? Like, oh, did you know that your body has a slight imbalance this way? Oh, you didn't know that? Well, here, I have this information for you. Okay, let's get back on topic. Ice baths, icing. So, I think personally, my own opinion, right? Ice baths are probably more beneficial for your mind than it is for your body. That's just me. Um, some people swear by it, right? But like usually a lot of the time it comes down to what you put your belief in, right? Like there's people in history that like live or die, like will just because of their faith or because of their country, because you know they're defending their family, whatever it is that they put their faith in, right? um People get these like this like crazy strength or confidence or whatever when they feel like they're properly supported by XYZ, right? And I think fitness is kind of going that way for some people nowadays. Like in the 21st century, it's very common for people not to have any type of like religion or spirituality, which I'm not going to go into. That'll be a different podcast for a different time. But fitness has almost become that religion for some people. I've met people where their religion is their diet. So there's like these keto people, there's vegans, there's plant-based diet, there's so many different like avenues that people are grabbing a hold onto, and they're like, this is my identity, this is who I am, I will live and die for keto. And it's like, hold up. We're having a conversation here. I'm not trying to like go to battle with you right now. But it's the world's a very interesting place. But I think um ice baths kind of fall into this category of giving you something to give your mind strength, right? So like in your head, if you think that like giving you an ice bath is making you recover 100% better, you're like, oh man, I've never felt better coming out of an ice bath. Scientifically, maybe. Um, mindfulness wise, right? It yeah, like you 100% feel better because you took an ice bath. So like I think that's saying something for itself, right? As when it comes to icing an injury, right? So switching gears, not the ice baths, but putting ice on an injury when you're injured. I would say stay away from it. I'll say this. There's very little to no evidence saying that ice helps healing. All it does is just numb it. And it's like having a hole in a window in your house, and instead of fixing the hole in your window, you're just closing the door. You're like, we'll just yeah, we're gonna do anything with that. It's still there. The injuries, like the window is still broken, ice is everywhere in the room. You're just not looking at it anymore. So don't do that. Fix the window. let let the policeman and the ambulance come to the car accident, as I used earlier, right? Let me know your thoughts about this. I'm gonna cut it here because I've been literally talking for 40 minutes. Isn't that crazy? All right. Thanks for joining me on our second episode of the ScuttleButt Podcast. We're gonna go more into this type of like roommate type of fitness related things. And like I said, hopefully we'll have our first guest here in next week. So all right, leave a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.